together. So what my plan is to do a quick introduction of what we're going to be speaking about this morning, and then for your benefit, go around the room, have everyone introduce themselves to you, and then I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds great, Janez.
Okay, perfect. Well, good morning. Thank you everybody for coming this morning. I'm really excited about today's webinar, so thank you for being here. I am a committee member of AFWA's Wildlife Viewing and Nature Tourism Working Group, and for almost 2 years now, we have been working with Virginia Tech staff on a multi-state conservation grant looking at wildlife viewers both regionally and nationally. Excuse me. So we in Idaho participated in an oversampling, so 15 states nationally participated in this, where we're taking a deeper dive into what wildlife viewers in Idaho have to think about our agency, how they want to engage with us, how they want to receive communication, and the ways they want to support us, maybe even through volunteering or through monetary contributions. So with today's webinar, we're going to also be focusing on Idaho because we are a pretty fast growing state. And with that, especially you guys know in the Communications Bureau, comes different folks from around the country with very different set of wildlife values, how they want to interact with our agency, the ways they want to participate with access, and the ways they possibly want to support wildlife conservation. So this constituency of wildlife viewers is, I think, super important, and hopefully today's webinar will give more muscle to that growing viewership. So with that, I'm going to just have everyone go around the room and we'll get started. So we'll start with Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Park. I'm the Communications Bureau Chief. I've been in place about 14 months now, but fairly new still.
I'm Sarah Casanelli. I'm the Digital Content Manager in the Communications Bureau.
Hello there, I'm John Rochelle. I'm Wildlife Bureau Chief.
No, you're
It's already started.
This is your first
You're not getting
introduction.
paid for it, but you started.
And new Deputy Director.
Hi, I'm Rex Salabanks, Wildlife Diversity Program Manager. And actually, I just want to say it's probably been 25 years since we last crossed paths when you were at KBO. Good to see you again.
Hi, Ashley. I'm Vicki Renaud, I'm the Conservation Education Supervisor, and I supervise the MK Nature Center.
Ashley, I'm Jim Fredericks, the director, new director.
You know, that shining, sparkly stuff.
Yeah, welcome.
Hi, Ian Melke. I am the marketing manager in the Communication Bureau.
I'm Sarah Foch. I'm a wildlife educator, formerly in the Idaho Watchable Wildlife Program.
And that's it. So with
Great.
that, I will have Emily and Ashley introduce themselves and we'll get started. Just as a FYI, Director Fredericks needs to leave in about 40 minutes. So just no pressure.
We'll
Yeah.
cover what we can.
Yeah,
We're fast talkers. All right. Well, great to meet you all. And we're looking forward to sharing our results with you. I'm Ashley Dare. I'm an associate professor at Virginia Tech in the Department of Fish and Wildlife Conservation and Conservation Social Scientist. I'm joined here by Emily Singular and Emma Posley. Emily was lead author and Emma was a co-author. They're both students at Virginia Tech. Emily is working on her master's and Emma is an undergraduate. So you'll hear a lot more from Emily during the presentation because we'll be co-presenting today, and Emma's just joining to listen in, and then we'll have to run off to a class at some point. All right, I'm going to share my screen here and we'll get going. Okay, so as Janez shared, this is a presentation related to the report that we've recently developed for you about a survey of wildlife viewers in your state. We're really glad to have some key leaders in the state participating in this presentation. Additionally, we're recording it if you all would like to show it to anyone else later on. Your survey report is drafted We are excited to have gotten feedback from Dinesh already on it. And then additionally, if anyone else would like to provide feedback in the next couple of weeks, that would be great. And then we will wrap that up and consider it final, which you all can then decide how you'd like to distribute it within your state agency. As I shared with you all, Emily is the lead author on this report. It was additionally co-written with by Christy Patotsky, a PhD student who's not able to join us here today, and Emma Pausley as well. The four of us are part of a larger team that has worked on these wildlife viewing surveys, both at the national and regional level, and then in 15 different states. And we've also had great collaborators like Dinesh from the Wildlife Viewing and Nature Tourism Working Group. A small group of them, including Dinesh, was our executive committee who helped us write the grant for this multi-state funding opportunity and also helped guide the whole process. And then a larger stakeholder advisory committee of about 20 people also made sure that throughout the process, we were really ensuring that this report and entire process was providing feedback for states about wildlife viewers that would be useful to state agencies. So in terms of what we're going to cover here today, we can't cover the whole report. It's quite extensive. We're going to provide you with some highlights on how your agency can support wildlife viewers, broaden relevance of your agency to wildlife viewers, particularly who don't hunt and fish already, who probably don't have as strong a connection to your agency, which you'll see is based upon our data, and then also develop financial support opportunities for wildlife viewers. Before I go any further, though, I want to provide a little bit of survey background on one, what I mean by wildlife viewers, and then two, why we were doing this work. So we adapted the definition from the National Survey of Hunting, Fishing, and Wildlife-Related Recreation to say that wildlife viewing is closely observing, feeding, and photographing wildlife, visiting parks or natural areas to observe, feed, or photograph wildlife, and maintain plantings and natural areas for the benefit of wildlife. I realize that feeding wildlife is not always something that you want to be promoting in your agency, yet this is the definition for what a wildlife viewer is. And we looked at the subcomponents of it, which you'll see later on. And certainly it's something that you all can parse out if you wish to in the future. Another thing that I wanted to say about this is we were interested in people who were purposefully wildlife viewing, not just someone who happened to notice wildlife while they were doing something else, like gardening or exercising or hunting or fishing or scouting for game rather than viewing wildlife. So that definition was provided to participants when we asked them if they were wildlife viewers. So the reason the Wildlife Viewing and Nature Tourism Working Group was interested in this project, as well as others, was given trends in wildlife viewing that I'm sure you all are aware of. As of 2011, the last time a comprehensive survey of wildlife viewers in your state was conducted, it was believed that there were about 500,000 adults in Idaho who viewed wildlife. More recently, in the National Survey of Hunting, Fishing, and Wildlife-Related Recreation, they found that 14.3 million additional viewers between 2011 and 2016 got involved in wildlife viewing, increasing the national participation rate to about 1/3 of the people in the nation participate in wildlife viewing, which I'm sure you all know is considerably more than the proportion of people in any state that hunt or fish. Increase comes primarily from a rise in around the home viewing. And you're going to see that theme throughout this presentation. A lot of viewing is happening near where people live. And during the same time, we know that hunting and angling rates are declining or remaining stable. And so that's drawing a lot of this interest amongst wildlife agencies to think about viewers as a way to expand the supporters that exist for their agency and ensure that the agency has relevance to the public far into the future. So in addition to the rationale that I just provided you, we asked the states who were part of our steering committee why they wanted information about wildlife viewers. And as I look through this list, think about what your interests are as well. And if we're missing something, interested to hear about that when we get to the Q&A side of things. So one, of course, the viewers growing in number and the potential influence within states. It can also be really difficult for state agencies to reach viewers who aren't engaged in other types of wildlife recreation. There's not an easy database for a license for viewing. And there's not typically a really straightforward email list to reach out to them. As a result, a lot of state agencies lack information on viewers' thoughts, preferences, and behaviors. The national survey does a nice job of providing things like demographics, number of days viewing, but it doesn't get into what do they think about the agency or what do they do related to conservation. And then a lot of agencies are really interested in how can they better serve and communicate with viewers and other underserved groups so that they are reaching a broader swath of the public, and also hopefully then bringing that group of people into their group of supporters. And then finally, connecting viewers to mechanisms to contribute financially. I did want to call out that if anyone's interested in the literature that exists more broadly about wildlife viewing, we started our project by doing a literature review. Emily and another graduate student, Kelsey Jennings, took the lead on that. And we'll send you, I should say, all of the links that I'm providing here today with QR codes, so you can take a look at any of this further. But that literature review does a nice job in a very short amount of space of summarizing key findings related to wildlife viewers that already have been found within the US and more broadly. Additionally, like Dinesh said, and I followed up as saying the same, there's a lot of insight out of the national and regional survey from this project as well. So if you want to look at how your state compares to the Western region, you can find that within this report. Additionally, the recommendations section of this report has a lot of case studies of things that states are doing across the US that can be really useful to consider doing elsewhere based upon the recommendations or based upon the findings of our surveys. And we'll call out a few of those case studies here today. All right, with that, I'm going to turn things over to Emily, who's going to share with you a bit more about our methods.
Thank you for the introduction, and hi, Ashley. I'm excited to be here with you all today. I used to work in the Tetons, so I'm used to seeing those mountains as the way that would look backwards to you all. But first, I'll just start out by talking a little bit about our survey instrument and administration. This survey was conducted online from October to December of 2021. It consisted of over 100 questions, and the data we're sharing with you today is based off of 504 complete responses that we received from Idaho. Just a little note on our sample size. In 2011, the population of wildlife viewers was estimated to be about 500,000. And based off of that known number of wildlife viewers in Idaho and our sample of 504 wildlife viewers, we calculated our sample size or margin of error at about plus or minus 5% within a 95% confidence interval. The survey, after asking for respondents' consent to participate, began with a screening question, asking people which of the following wildlife viewing behaviors they participated in. Like what Ashley said earlier, if someone said they didn't participate in any of those behaviors, they were not considered a wildlife viewer, and therefore they didn't complete the survey and they weren't a part of these results. So these questions covered a lot of different information about wildlife viewers. And like we said, Dinesh helped to inform kind of what specifically we were asking and looking at. We looked at demographic characteristics of wildlife viewers, their viewing behaviors and interests, so what type of wildlife they like to view. We also looked at their duration, location, and frequency of participation in wildlife viewing, including on state managed lands. We looked at their participation in other forms of outdoor recreation, their levels of specialization, their wildlife viewing related expenditures related to trips and equipment. We also looked at the barriers and social support they experienced in their participation in wildlife viewing and their likelihood of participating in conservation behaviors. We also took a close look at their behaviors and their relationship with you all at the Idaho Department of Fish and Game. We examined their familiarity, perceptions of, and trust in the agency. We looked at their experience with IDFG programs and services. We also examined the past ways that they had financially contributed to the agency. We also looked at their likelihood to support the agency through conservation behaviors in the future. We also examined their preferred forms of viewing support from you all and how they would like to receive information from the agency. Now, this survey was a panel survey. Panel surveys are online platforms of individuals that are recruited to take surveys from companies such as Qualtrics, which is what we contracted with for this survey. Respondents are generally compensated for their participation, usually in the form of a small gift card. And to increase the high quality data from these surveys, we utilized attention checks, time limits, and quotas. I'll pause here and just define a little bit more about those attention checks. So we used a few types of attention checks, which are contradicting statements. So for example, I trust Idaho Fish and Game. I don't trust Idaho Fish and Game. If someone said strongly agree to both of those items or strongly disagree, that would be a sign to us that they might just be clicking through the survey or maybe not being as intentional with their responses. If someone failed 2 sets of statements like that, they were then removed from our final sample. We also established a minimum completion time for the survey. So individuals who completed the survey faster than what we set in our pilot of the survey were also removed from the final sample. Our data analysis was conducted in SPSS, which is the statistical package for social science. We used descriptive statistics for statewide results and chi-square tests and t-tests to explore the differences between consumptive and non-consumptive wildlife viewers. And this data set will actually be made openly available to you all once we complete the report, so you have that to look forward to as well. And now that you understand a little bit more about the survey, I'm going to share some quick high-level results of wildlife viewers in Idaho. First, I wanted to take a look at these 2 different types of viewers. Non-consumptive wildlife viewers of those who have not participated in hunting and angling in the past 5 years, whereas consumptive wildlife viewers have participated in hunting and angling. We thought it was really important to compare these 2 groups because often they can be approached as 2 completely different people. When I was working with the Park Service and I thought of a birder, I was always thinking of someone who was really focused on birds and someone that wouldn't also be a hunter and angler. But what we found in Idaho and in the rest of the states is there's actually a lot of overlap between those consumptive and non-consumptive viewers. In fact, in Idaho, over half of our sample were consumptive wildlife viewers, meaning they participated in some form of hunting or angling. Specifically, we found that just about 1/3 of wildlife viewers in Idaho are also anglers, 4% of wildlife viewers in Idaho are also hunters, and 20% of wildlife viewers in Idaho are very busy who participate in hunting, angling, and wildlife viewing. Flashback to what we talked about with the panel survey, we also use something called quotas, which is when you establish characteristics of a population based on something known about them. The 2016 National Survey of Wildlife Viewing found these kind of standards for age, education, and gender of wildlife viewers in the United States. And we used those standards in our survey for Idaho and programmed our survey to reach people who are at those levels to ensure this was a little bit more representative of wildlife viewers. So the mean age of our wildlife viewers in Idaho was 46 years old. It was about a 50-50 split between men and women, and about 10% of them had received more than 4 years or more of higher education. We also looked at the ethno-racial identity of wildlife viewers in Idaho. And the most important part of this is this box down on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, which said that 89% are white only, so that's white excluding Hispanic, and 11% of wildlife viewers in Idaho were BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous, or people of color, meaning that identified as some other race or ethnicity, or they identified as white and another race or ethnicity. Just less than half of the respondents in Idaho reported their total household income as under $50,000, while about 19% of them reported a total household income of $100,000 annually or more. And our final characteristic, and this is our first graph looking at those consumptive and non-consumptive viewers, is the residential location of wildlife viewers. And so we found that about 62% of the wildlife viewers in Idaho lived in an urban area or a small city, which is a population of 10,000 or more. And we actually found no statistically significant difference between consumptive and non-consumptive viewers, meaning there's roughly the same amount of both types of those viewers living in these locations. Finally, we also asked wildlife viewers what forms of wildlife viewing they participated in. We found that visiting parks and natural areas for the purpose of viewing wildlife was the most popular activity, followed by photographing wildlife. And with that, I'll hand it back to Ashley for 5 key insights from the survey.
Sorry, Emily, for that little test to see if you remembered what was on the slide. Things moved forward there with my mouse.
That's okay. We're excited.
All right. So as Emily said, we're going to share our results based upon 5 key insights. And we'd like to do this way so that you can see key things to take away and then the data to support that so you don't get overwhelmed with lots and lots of graphs. So just to give you a little teaser of what we're going to cover here is we recommend that you all better support wildlife viewers in Idaho by 1, providing more information and access. And you're going to see why we say that. Then 2, promoting around the home viewing opportunities. 3, developing social support networks for viewers. And then you also may wish to focus on broadening your relevance to wildlife viewers who do not hunt and fish, because those are the folks that don't have much of a connection with you right now. And secondly, we provide insights on how you could develop financial contribution opportunities for wildlife viewers if that's of interest. Okay, so let's begin first to this information and access side of things. We gave people a big long list of all the ways that Idaho wildlife viewers could be supported by the agency. And the ones that came to the top were more information about where to go see wildlife, more information about wildlife in Idaho. And I'm going to skip over the next one there. More information about how to view wildlife and more information about where and when to view wildlife where there's no hunting. So you can see again and again that more information is what was of interest to people. And then additionally, access to more places to go wildlife viewing, which I'll come back to in a minute. In terms of how people are interested in receiving information from your agency, the top 3 responses that came out were your website, printed materials, and email updates. So pretty traditional approaches of reaching viewers. We also had this big long list of all the options out there. So if you're wondering about where does social media fall in there, you can see that Facebook did come out as number 5. I will say that local news is up higher than in a lot of the other states that we worked with. In most states, Facebook was number 4 or number 3, not a big difference. And then other types of social media you can see are much lower there with 10% or less people interested in them other than Instagram and YouTube. Likewise, as Emily was making those comparisons about consumptive and non-consumptive viewers, we don't have a lot of differences here, but the places where you see the stars are places where the consumptive group had a higher interest in receiving information from you in that way. Keep in mind that people could check as many boxes as they wanted to, and the consumptive folks tended to check boxes more about wanting to receive information from you in various ways. So key takeaway here, viewers in your state want more information about wildlife and where to view it, and they are interested in turning to your website. And on your website, they currently can find information about wildlife. They can find information about your birding trail as well. And it's a little bit varied, I would say, compared to some other state agencies. And so I want to show you all an example of what might be a way to approach this if you were trying to really build that part out that you can see that viewers are interested in. So as an example, here's the Virginia DWR website. You can see that actually viewing is one of the main response options at the top. And then within the menu that you get to from that viewing section, it calls out where to go viewing, which we see is something that people really want to know about, how to go viewing, the birding basics side of things, information about festivals, and then information about wildlife cams. I will say that the state agencies that are involved in the wildlife viewing and nature tourism working group are currently working on template information for agencies who are interested in building out their websites related to viewing. So that might be something that you're interested in the future as a way to do that in a much more time efficient fashion. Another thing that I wanted to emphasize is that a lot of your viewers are beginner or novice. And very few are advanced or expert. And this can often be surprising because agencies tend to hear from the organized groups of viewers, like a bird watching club. And that tends to have a lot more of the advanced or expert folks in it. But if we look broadly across viewers in your state, a lot of them are beginner or novice, and that's even higher for the non-consumptive viewers. So that's probably the reason that you're seeing so many people saying, I just want more information. And then in terms of improving access, this came out in all of our states that more access was of interest. And it's hard to know, is that lack of access tied to people's lack of awareness about where to go viewing? Is it really the case that there's not many places to go viewing? And you can see here, according to your birding trail map, you all do have a lot of sites. And a lot of those sites are state managed lands. Additionally, 3 and 4 wildlife viewers told us that they currently participate in viewing on state managed lands. So that really is a place that you all have the ability to, either through your own agency or through partnering with other state agencies, to think about ways to enhance the wildlife viewing opportunities. Another thing to think about with this question of whether or not it's really access or knowing where to go is that people are really limited in their participation by the financial costs, the lack of free time, and the distance to viewing locations. And they perceive, or about more than half of viewers perceive, that these are things that are really limiting the extent of their viewing. So it may be that thinking about more viewing opportunities right in people's neighborhoods, in their backyards, or in urban areas is really something that's worthwhile to consider in order to hit that access issue. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Emily, who's going to talk about around the home viewing.
Thank you, Ashley. Around the home viewing is our second kind of key takeaway from this presentation. It helps to address a lot of those barriers because these activities and behaviors are something that might be a little bit easier to participate in, and you don't have to travel as far or potentially spend as much money. So we surveyed wildlife viewers about this whole big list of all the locations in Idaho that they participate in wildlife viewing. We actually found that the #1 area they participated in was state managed areas, which you all may be responsible for, followed by their own home or property. So this just shows the importance of considering wildlife viewing, both from that state managed area lens, but also behaviors people can engage in around the home. So our key takeaway point for this section is supporting around the home viewing through encouraging habitat conservation behaviors may be a great way to help tie in more connections to your agency. So we surveyed wildlife viewers about their likelihood of participating in conservation behaviors with or in support of your agency. We found that everyone was really interested in cleaning up trash or litter, but also enhancing wildlife habitat or collecting data or information about wildlife or habitat. So promoting these things, potentially a clean up your local creek or stream day, you could also find that as a way to kind of tie in connections to wildlife viewing, or have flyers or some of those printed materials about wildlife viewing to help get that information to people while they're doing something that they're already likely to engage in with the agency. Our third point from this presentation is the importance of developing social support networks for wildlife viewers. In Idaho, we asked respondents about how much support they perceive they receive from their family, friends, peers, and mentors. We found that family and friends had really high level of influence in participating in wildlife viewing in Idaho, but mentors was a lot lower. In fact, it was the lowest across the list from all respondents. So we identified this as one way that the agency could step in and help support wildlife viewing through developing these mentorship opportunities or teaching individuals how to participate in wildlife viewing. We also wanted to focus on BIPOC viewers in Idaho, or viewers who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color. In our response, we had a little bit less participation from BIPOC viewers than you see from the total population of BIPOC in Idaho, which is 18% compared to just 11% from our sample. And one reason this could be lower is because of a concept called the don't loop, which essentially states if you don't meet others who are engaged in a particular activity, the odds are that you will not take interest in that activity yourself. Under this theory, one method of promoting participation can be through BIPOC community engagement. Our partners in South Carolina, who we also conducted an oversample survey in, began a community engagement effort in 2015. They hired a Hispanic outreach coordinator who developed bilingual resources and outreach strategies. The program was largely considered a success, and in 2021, they actually began piloting a similar program to connect with their Black or African American population in South Carolina. Another audience to consider is wildlife viewers or birders who have disabilities. In this survey, we asked wildlife viewers to what extent do you experience accessibility challenges, which we defined as the difficulties someone experiences in interacting with, or while using the physical or social environment while trying to engage in a meaningful activity, such as wildlife viewing or birding. This may result because of a mobility challenge, blindness or low vision, intellectual or developmental disabilities, mental health illness, being deaf or hard of hearing, or other health concerns. And in Idaho, we found that just over a third of all wildlife viewers experience somewhat, quite a bit, or a great deal of these accessibility challenges while wildlife viewing. Now, how can you connect with these populations? One way can be through spotlighting individual areas where you could participate in birding in Idaho that are a little bit more accessible. This website, Birdability, in connection with Audubon, works to spotlight locations that are more accessible for people with disabilities or access challenges. And another step that you could take is just to update the accessible sites in Idaho. If there's any other viewing sites, there's already this great list on the website, but it hasn't been updated for a few years. So this could be a great way just to add what you currently have there and connect a little bit more with those wildlife viewers who do have accessibility challenges. And with that, I will pass things back to Ashley for the rest of the presentation.
All right, thanks so much, Emily. Okay, so let's talk about broadening relevance to wildlife viewers who don't hunt or fish. So we did find that consumptive and non-consumptive viewers have really different perceptions of and experiences with your agency. And particularly with those non-consumptive viewers, there really seems to be an opportunity to increase basic familiarity with your agency and provide them with tailored support. And in doing so, you'll probably also be supporting that closer core to you, those consumptive viewers as well. All right, so we asked about familiarity with your agency, and you can see here again the consumptive versus non-consumptive groups. And what stands out is those darker colors indicating more familiarity are much more common amongst the consumptive viewers. So they're saying that they have a much higher level of familiarity with your agency than do non-consumptive viewers. In fact, almost 50% of non-consumptive viewers say they're not at all familiar with your agency or only slightly familiar with your agency. We also asked about logo recognition in all of the states, and this tended to be higher than just general familiarity with your agency. But again, you can see that same pattern that consumptive viewers have more logo recognition than do non-consumptive viewers. And then when we get to their experience with your programs, your services, and financial contributions, we find even stronger differences. So we provided a whole list of opportunities that viewers might be interested in taking advantage of, and these were standardized across all of the states. And Dinez helped us make sure that the options given here were ones that were actually available through your state agency. And across the board, you can see that that green bar of those consumptive viewers is much longer than the purple bar. So those consumptive viewers are accessing these mechanisms for supporting viewers much more than non-consumptive viewers are. And in fact, 50% or half of non-consumptive viewers say they've never taken advantage of any IDFG program or service within the past 5 years. And that's quite high compared to all the states that we did these surveys in. Then in terms of the ways that they've been involved in contributions, we might expect that if they're not involved in your programs and services, they also won't be involved in contributions. And we see that as well. We looked at contributions related to non-voluntary contributions, those things that you have to do in order to get access or to be able to participate in an activity, such as a license. And then we also looked at non-voluntary contributions, the things that you don't have to do, but the way that you can contribute to an agency if you wish to do so. And again, we see these consumptive viewers involved much more in those non-voluntary mechanisms, not surprising because they exist for consumptive viewers and not necessarily for non-consumptive viewers. You still do see some non-consumptive viewers buying a fishing license or hunting license, even though they say they haven't done that in the past 5 years. It may be because that allowed them to get access to land. It may be because they were buying it for a family member. And then voluntary contributions, much lower here, not surprising, I'm sure, to you all, knowing how you get your funding within the state. But again, we see that same pattern, at least for the first two, that consumptive viewers are doing more in terms of buying any sort of products from your agency or donating a portion of their state income tax to your agency, direct donations and donations of land being much more limited. All right, so I called out some differences there. I wanted to also point out a couple of similarities. One is both consumptive and non-consumptive viewers feel that the level of prioritization for programs and services is low or too low, I should say, in terms of 25% of them, a quarter of them. The majority of them say it's about right, which is good news. They feel really satisfied there. And very few people feel like you're doing too much for viewers. All right, so let's think about ways that you could build financial mechanisms if you wanted to. The great news that we have here is despite the low levels of contributions by non-consumptive viewers and the low levels of contributions through non-voluntary mechanisms, we saw people saying that in the future, they would be willing to give more in those ways. And I think a really important thing that this highlights is, one, people are more optimistic maybe than what they actually do, which we do see quite often. But secondly, there's a lot of opportunity there. So if you can make the connections and opportunities and ways that they can contribute clear to them and that they would want to be contributing to you because they see returns on that investment or they see a benefit in your agency, I think you have a lot of opportunity. So the lands access permit or a fishing license were the top items here, with 70% of people saying, yeah, they'd be moderately, very, or extremely likely to purchase that in the future. Followed by fees for a program or event, a place to consider growing your programming. And then really high numbers for hunting license interest amongst people. This is much higher than what we saw in other states. And then in terms of non-voluntary mechanisms, you can see the whole list of options here, and that habitat stamp is lower than any others, but close to the hunting license as well. And then in terms of the voluntary mechanisms, products were of interest to people, followed by a conservation lottery ticket, and then either a conservation habitat stamp or a conservation license plate. So you can see all of those options across the board here as well. And I should say that in our report, we have all of these graphs for everything. If you want to dig in more and think more about what exactly do they mean, you can open up to a specific section. One thing that I wanted to call out about this is other states like Virginia DWR have been thinking about ways that they could really encourage participation of the non-consumptive viewers to contributions by non-consumptive viewers to the state by making sure that they tailored a program that very clearly gave back to habitat and to viewing opportunities. And we did find in a survey question that we had in your survey as well, that if you all actually designated funds for those mechanisms, viewers would be more likely to give funds to your state. So through the Restore the Wild program, people can donate in sort of a membership type way to the agency. They also do get a public lands access pass for the state wildlife management areas. And then they get a report every year on how exactly those funds were spent. And we've found through our focus groups and through a variety of continued measures along these lines that people say, yes, we want to know that our funds are actually going to the things that we care about. And then we want to hear back about how that worked. All right, so in terms of what's next for our project, we now have a phase 2 multi-state grant, which is super exciting. We've recently awarded that from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and from AFWA. And so as part of that, we're going to continue to distribute our results at workshops, conferences, and meetings. Not all states have been able to have a state-specific webinar, so this will be a great way to reach out to more folks. We also have a community of practice that Dinez is participating in, as well as some others from your state agency, that brings together all of the states that are interested in implementing these results. And we are supporting them as sort of coaches on the Virginia Tech side, as well as peer support from other state agencies through monthly web-based meetings and one in-person meeting to ensure that they're supported and working together and sort of maximizing efficiency in implementing these results through programs within states. And then ultimately, all the states that have done this will be highlighted on a website where we'll bring together all the resources and examples. And so other state agencies can check out that website, check out those resources, and again, hopefully efficiently create more opportunities to engage wildlife viewers. As I mentioned, we're going to have one in-person meeting that's going to be at the Pathways Conference. I hope we'll see a bunch of folks from your agency there. The Pathways Conference is a human dimensions-based conference that tends to be in Colorado about every other year. This year, it's being co-hosted by Colorado State University, Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, and also us at Virginia Tech. And we're really excited because the focus is on this group of people that have a different set of values than what agencies have traditionally connected with. And so there is going to be a lot of information about wildlife viewing and about other ways to engage and think about involving this new generation of wildlife recreationists and wildlife enthusiasts. We also are moving forward with some additional analyses. We're doing a specific report on urban versus rural viewers. A lot of agencies are interested in how can they think about specifically connecting to that urban audience, as well as Emily's doing additional analysis related to accessibility challenges as part of her master's thesis, which we'll share with you all as it becomes available. And then there's tons of opportunity for additional analysis. You all fortunately have a human dimensions specialist in your state. And we're encouraging them and others who might be interested to download the data set. Dinez will have that for you, and we'll also share that when we release the report, and play with it as much as you like and figure out other ways that it would be useful for you to explore the data so that you all can guide your programming, whether it be communications or the work of the Watchable Wildlife team or other efforts. So with that, again, I look forward to any comments that anyone has about the report. We appreciate feedback to make sure that it's usable for you. And then we also do really encourage you to check out the executive summary of that, the recommendations section of that, and then jump to any other sections of it that are helpful to your team. And please also do share it broadly within your agency. Finally, here's our contact info if you want to reach us. I highly recommend going to number 2 there, Emily. First time on sabbatical, so my inbox looks like a bit of a tornado. And we would love to get feedback on our presentation, and Dinez will share that link with you too. It's helping us define how we're approaching phase 2 for our project. So I think I'll stop sharing so that we can see you all a bit better as we field any questions.
Thank you, Emily. Ashley, let me make the screen a little bit bigger on our end as well. Yeah,
I think they can make it big.
okay, you can make it. Yeah, you need to see us. Any questions, comments, digesting?
Yeah, so I'm just going to speak first only because I have to jump out of the room. But I know there's going to be a good discussion, I'm sure, after I leave. But very interesting stuff, Emily, Ashley, and a lot of it is in keeping with some of the things I was just talking with staff downstairs as I kind of laid out my vision for the department. So appreciate hearing that. I do have, there are a lot of different questions that I could ask, but I honestly don't have time to sit around for the answers. One question I have is the definition of wildlife viewing is not, it's obviously not seeing the elk through the scope. It's not viewing when you're in the act of hunting, but was it defined such that if somebody's out fishing and they're enjoying looking at the birds or whatever, is that wildlife viewing? Or if you're bird hunting and you get to see a lot of elk, which we all do and enjoy, is that wildlife viewing? What's the narrowness?
Yes, that definitely was. We were pulling out, like, if you just happen to be scouting for your hunting, and like, yes, you viewed wildlife in that process. But certainly if you're viewing while you're doing another type of recreation, which you hear from people all the time that they do, you have plenty of time sitting in your deer stand, that's certainly wildlife viewing. And as you can see, we had that large proportion of folks who are hunters, who are anglers, and who also are viewers. So it was capturing that.
Right. And so kind of a follow-up question was, did you have any consumptive people that did not regard themselves as wildlife viewers?
We did not. They were screened out of the survey initially. So the survey was specifically asking for wildlife viewers, and so we did not get them participating in it.
Okay.
I can tell you from having done this similar work in Virginia where we didn't do that, there is a proportion of people who don't consider themselves to be viewers who also hunt and angle, but it's slim.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Well, again, thanks for the presentation and look forward to more follow-up.
Thanks, Jim. I have a question. I'm interested in learning more about viewers, because I don't know that much about them. This is a great step getting there, but I'm curious, like, the viewers, what do you have a breakdown in the survey of what species they're viewing? Is it primarily birds, or how does that break down?
We do. I'll unless Emily has it off the top of her head, I'll stall for a second while she pulls it up so that you all can see it. But we did ask people about what types of wildlife they viewed and gave them a whole variety of taxa. And Emily, do you want me to let you share? You should be able to share your screen if you want to.
Yeah.
She can show you what that slide looks like.
And for some of the other states that, like Washington, has.
Sure,
Right,
yeah,
so-
different available species.
It is. It's loading. Okay. The report is over. It's close to 200 pages. So when I tried to pull it up just now, my computer needed to take a really big breath. But we'll pull this up now.
Is it?
Figure 9 on page 39.
There you go.
There we go. Someone's done their homework.
Interesting that more consumptive viewers were interested in viewing reptiles and fish than non-consumptive viewers. What does that mean?
So this is the total breakdown of wildlife viewing type. So most people were interested in birds and land mammals. And we also did ask about marine mammals for the ability for us to compare this across different states who do have marine mammals. And there was no difference between consumptive and non-consumptive viewers in terms of viewing birds or land mammals. So it's very similar interest with both groups in those two sections.
Okay, that's helpful. Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
Is there a way to cross reference this with whether they're watching close to home via traveling a long distance?
That would be possible for future analysis. We don't have that proposed structured in the report, but it is a form that you definitely could do with the data.
Okay.
I will say your land mammals is higher than a lot of other states. Probably because you have some pretty cool land mammals to view compared to us here in Virginia, who get stuck with mostly deer. But birds is up there on the top for a lot of states, most states. Yeah, and then we do have additional information in the report, which we weren't able to present here today just because we had to streamline about what % of days people spend close to home, away from home, out of state as well. And so there's that info in there. Of course, the close to home is the most prominent. Additionally, we are conducting this survey in the midst of the pandemic. So it's done in an interesting way where we asked about in a typical year, because normally you would say in the past year, but the past year was in the midst of lockdowns. So we had to ask about that slightly differently. But we still think that the info that we have there is pretty typical pattern for what you'd expect. And it tracks with what they've seen in the national survey too.
Hey, Ashley, what are your thoughts on whether or not the non-consumptive viewers, could this be a gateway activity, do you think, to hunting and fishing? I mean, is there a segment of our population that they're non-consumptive, they're viewing, but if they were given, better access or better information on how they could begin participating in hunting and fishing, they would? What I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question that comes up a lot. And I've seen some state agencies make that assumption that would be a mechanism. I think that the evidence is there to support the connection to fishing more than it is to support the connection to hunting across all of the states. We've seen a lot of those non-consumptive viewers say that they would have an interest in the future in fishing. I also think it's less of a stretch for people sort of values wise, thinking about, their comfort with killing wildlife, which tends to be less common amongst folks who are non-consumptive viewers. People don't tend to think of killing a fish in the same way as they think of other types of animals. That said, your state was pretty high on the interest in hunting. I don't know, Emily, if you recall off the top of your head, what percentage of those were coming from the non-consumptive versus the consumptive viewer spot? That could have been mostly folks coming from the consumptive viewers.
Yeah, it was over 50% of the sample was consumptive, which was a little bit higher than most of the other states.
Yeah. Yeah. So Rex, I mean, my take on it would be, I think you've got a good chance with fishing, and hunting is going to be more of a stretch. And there's certainly been research looking at like sort of and I'm sure you all have thought about it too, and have seen it too, the foodie movement related to getting people involved in hunting. And I think maybe your state too, have been involved in another AFWA project where we looked at college students and how to get college students involved who've never grown up with hunting. There's some room for movement there, but it's not going to be a large percentage.
And just to build on that, I do think it would be more likely to participate in catch and release fishing at first, because they get to experience the fish that way, but they're not actually killing it most of the time.
It's a good point, Emily.
Ashley, I got a question, and I'll just say, I know in our America's Wildlife Values studies, there was a huge interest from non-consumptive users for hunting. I think more than most states.
Oh, interesting.
That's similar in this study.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any questions that correlated like fishing games activities to providing opportunity or supporting wildlife for wildlife viewing? Was there questions like that they correlated the opportunity to view wildlife with the agency?
Yeah. So you mean like, were they actually thinking of the agency as the place to go to for wildlife viewing? Is that
or is the agency responsible for ensuring that opportunity exists?
We didn't specifically ask them, do they think that should be the role of the agency? I mean, we asked about those programs and services in the context of, are you getting them from the agency? We didn't explore things like, are you getting them instead from your Audubon club? I will say that we did find, and again, this was not something that we presented, high levels of trust in your agency across the board. And high levels of belief about your agency's ability to do wildlife viewing related management. So I do think that there is support there, that your agency is an appropriate agency for that. And then likewise, that question about how much should your agency be prioritizing wildlife viewing, with like a quarter of people saying they could do it more. I think that's also an indication that they think that is an appropriate role for your agency.
And then while we're on the topic of trust, I just wanted to point out that the trust in the agency was really high, which might also be why people are so interested in information from the agency, because they already trust it. So they think they can trust the information you're providing as well about wildlife.
Okay. Yeah, on a related question. So I just want to know, based on your surveys in other states, and the perception of you as in terms of how well we're doing, about the right amount of information in terms of viewing, how do we compare to other states? In terms of, whether or not we're getting just about right.
That's a great question. We haven't plotted it with all the state agencies, and we should. And we should plot it by like how many of them have a birding trail or how many of them have other opportunities. It's generally around that sort of same set of numbers, that like somewhere around 3/4 say that you're doing the right thing, and about 1/4 say more, but there is some variation there. So Rex, we'll have to get back to you on that. But I think that's a really fun thing for us to look at.
Yeah, I want to know whether we're getting like an A, a B, a C, or a D.
Yeah. It's always good to know if you're like the best or at the bottom of the pile, right?
Right.
I guess I'd like to turn Rex's and the first question kind of on its head. Do you see much in movement with consumptive folks into viewing? And then does that grow support for agency efforts for non-huntable, fishable species? So for example, if we're working on some endangered species somewhere, if you have someone who's traditionally consumptive, but they get out there enough and they start looking at chickadees and important things like that, do they become more interested in wider efforts that the agency does and more supportive of those wider efforts?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I would love to see a sort of like a lifespan analysis where you ask people like, what wildlife recreation were you involved in each decade of your life, to sort of look at some of those changes. And I haven't seen anyone do that. What I can tell you is in this study, as well as in some work that I did back in New York with colleagues about, I guess it was almost 10 years ago, we did find that people who hunt and view are the people who are most supportive of conservation and do the most for conservation too. So as people, or at least I don't know if it's necessarily as people, but those people who are the most engaged in different types of wildlife recreation are also the most engaged in conservation. Now, the question is it a chicken or egg thing, right? Is it like they already are really into wildlife, so then they get involved in all these activities, or is it the involvement in all those activities that then leads to all of that conservation? And again, it's you know, lacking information on that front, but good question. And it's helpful to know that that's something that you all think about that could be useful for you to know in terms of helping your management in the state, is understanding how people sort of move amongst types of wildlife recreation and how that might change their interests and what the state's agency is doing or their overarching support for you.
And something similar to that we didn't have time to show today, I did want to share this graph about the likelihood to increase their financial contributions to the agency. So we provided this list of ways that what the agency could do with funds people contribute to them, and if they would be more likely to increase their contributions based on using these funds. We saw that this item right here, the second one, if my fund supported the conservation of rare or vulnerable species, I may contribute more to the agencies. So to us, that shows that there is interest in the agency using the funds to support those rare or vulnerable or endangered species in Idaho.
Emily, can you scroll that down to the consumptive viewers? I think that specifically hits in there. Yeah. So you can see there's still pretty strong interest amongst the consumptive viewers for that rare and vulnerable item. It's one of their top items, as well as education and outreach and matching. Yeah, and the thing that I note across these graphs too, and we need to get them into one of our future presentations, is people are really interested in a lot of these mechanisms, right? That there's not one where there's like, yeah, that's not going to influence me at all. There's only 15 to 20% of people that say that it won't have any influence on them if they knew that their funds went to these purposes. Here at the non-consumptive viewers, it's closer to 20, but all of those things driving them to want to give more to your state agency. Before we scroll through more graphs, hurry, someone ask a different question.
Super helpful.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, both of you. Appreciate your time as always. And I'm hoping that this will spark some good conversations offline between us and moving forward. And then thinking about the community of practice, what Idaho really wants to focus on, given the survey results as well. So.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Dinesh, so much for coordinating this for us. And thanks everybody for being here. Like we said, feel free to reach out to us if you have any follow-up questions. We look forward to any feedback on the report, and then we'll finalize that and get the report announcement out to you all so you can share it more broadly amongst your agency. And yeah, we hope to hear great things about how you're using these results. We hope they'll be useful to you.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank you.
day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.